Jesus was not crucified on Friday. That's a fact. That's what the Catholic Church says. That's what they just celebrated with Easter and everything. He rose on the first day of the week. He rose. But the time periods are a whole lot different. Over here I have a scratched up type of little deal on my chart up here. On Tuesday night, Jesus celebrated the Passover with his church. Now the church was in existence. He celebrated the Passover with his church. And then he went to the Mount of Olives, Gethsemane. During that night, now you have to realize, on Tuesday, after 6 p.m., it is actually Wednesday. Okay? That's Wednesday. Our time, we begin at 12 a.m. in the morning, end at 12 p.m. at night. But them, they began the night, or began the day at 6 p.m. and ended the day at 6 p.m. the next day. So now, here we are Tuesday. Tuesday, here, he had the Lord's Supper also. He instituted the Lord's Supper, and he had the Passover with his church. And that took place from the evening on, and then it became Wednesday. From 6 p.m. on is Wednesday. So, he went to Gethsemane, and somewhere in the middle of that night, this is Wednesday morning, real early, okay? Somewhere early in that morning, he was in the Garden of Gethsemane. He prayed, he prayed 3 times. He had his disciples. Some of the disciples went with him, Peter, James, and John, and they were there. And he asked them to pray with him, and they fell asleep. And then here comes Judas Iscariot. And Judas Iscariot runs up, grabs a hold of Jesus, and begins kissing him right in the mouth. He's holding on to him, he's kissing. That's the way they did that. The kiss was not like kissing you on the cheek or something. They kissed each other in the mouth back then. And he did that, and he told them, whoever I salute and I kiss, that is him. They tried to get Jesus for 3 years to arrest him and murder him. And now they have paid false witnesses. They paid Judas Iscariot 30 pieces of silver. The Bible said that would happen. The Bible in Psalm 23 and Isaiah 53 and Hosea, different places, there's all kinds of prophecies of what would happen here. Well, they arrested Jesus, and they took him to Annas' house, they took him to Caiaphas' house, and they also tried him before the Sanhedrin. He had 3 Jewish trials. 3 Jewish trials. You have a question, Larry? Or no?
No.
Had 3 Jewish trials, and they had 3 Roman trials. And Jesus was before Pilate 7 times. 7 times. Now, here we are, we're on Wednesday. Now Wednesday, you remember Wednesday started at 6 p.m. Tuesday, okay? On Wednesday, he goes before Pilate early in the morning. All of this trial is at nighttime, and everything they're doing is totally illegal against the law of Moses. It's against the law. But they're doing it, but they want to be spiritually clean. And they want to get this all done because Thursday is a holy day or another Sabbath. There's 2 Sabbaths that week. Now here we are on Wednesday, early in the morning. From midnight all the way 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. He had been tried 6 times. 3 times Jewish trial, 3 times, 1 before Pilate, 1 before Herod, and then back to Pilate. And this was all before 9 o'clock in the morning. Jesus did not have anything to eat since he instituted the Lord's Supper and the Passover with his church. He instituted the Lord's Supper with the church. He said, take this bread, eat, this is my body. And then the cup, he said, take this and drink it, it is my blood. And that's where he instituted the Lord's Supper, And there's a whole message you could do on that. Because he took the Passover dinner, the Passover feast from the Jewish family, and they had always done this in their homes. But now, from now on, the Passover, no Passover is valid after this period of time. It's done. The reason for the Passover has come and gone now. Jesus is there. He's the Passover lamb. And he entered that, and he took that, and he gave that Lord's Supper to the institution of his church. The church was there. The first gift placed in the church was apostles, and that was way back when they went up on top of the mountain. And when he came back down, and he named 12 apostles, and one of them now is going to betray him, which is Judas Iscariot. By the way, the word Iscariot means man from Kerioth. So we're Wednesday. We're at 9 o'clock a.m. now, in Wednesday. 9 a.m., Jesus is on the cross. He's on the cross from 9 till 12 o'clock, and at 12 o'clock, now we're going to read the things he said here. At 12 o'clock, we had a full eclipse. Now, historically and everything else, historically, history says that Jesus was crucified on Wednesday. The eclipse was on Wednesday, not on Friday, okay? It was on Wednesday historically. You can study this, and it tells about it in history. At 9 o'clock, he was on the cross. He conversed with at least two people that were crucified behind him. One on one side and one on the other. Now, I must say this. Bullinger said that there were 5 people altogether crucified, 2 on each side. And he uses different things to teach that. One of them asked Jesus to remember him when he came into his kingdom. He said, "This day you'll be with me in paradise." They were going to die that day. People could live for 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 days on the cross. They tried to prolong their lives on the cross, but now the Jews lost their ability to execute anyone or capital punishment not long after Jesus was born. In Genesis the 49, it says that the scepter would not part from Judah until Messiah came. Well, Messiah did come, and then they lost the ability. And the Jewish rabbis went through Jerusalem with ashes on their head, bawling and crying, and says, "Here we lost the scepter of Judah's scepter, and the Messiah hasn't come." The Messiah had come. They just didn't want to accept it. There's a lot of stuff in this message here. This is just getting you ready to go to the Bible. Okay? So all of this had taken place. They lost the scepter. They had to go to Pilate to get Jesus killed. It was a false premise that they brought against him. They brought false witnesses, and they paid a man to betray him. In the meanwhile, you know that Judas, after all of this happened, Judas went to the high priest and took the 30 pieces of silver back, and they wouldn't take the money. He said, "That's blood money. No, we can't do that. We can't do that." But then he took the money and threw it in the Holy of Holies. And he went off and went out and hanged himself, it says. He hung himself. And he's dead. They took the money, as Chuck Mister said, they must have had some real good CPAs back then, because they figured out how to get around this deal where they took that 30 pieces of silver, because the priest and the Sanhedrin, if somebody died, some stranger come by, some poor person died, they had to have a field, a graveyard to put them in, Potter's Field. And the Bible said that this would happen also, as we're going to see. All this has been taking place now at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on Wednesday. 3 p.m. on the afternoon on Wednesday, Jesus dies. He dies. He said, "Father, into your hands I deposit my spirit." Now, at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, it's going to be Thursday. And Thursday is a high holy Sabbath day. There are 2 Sabbaths in this week. And so they had to get Jesus in a grave between 3 p.m. when he's dead and 6 p.m. Now we find out that Joseph of Arimathea which was Jesus' uncle, he was a relative, and also Nicodemus, they went together and they begged Pilate to give them the body of Jesus. His body should have been taken and thrown into the dump because he was a criminal. The other people, their bodies were not buried. They were taken and thrown into dumps. Only, and if you went and asked for a body of a criminal that had been crucified, you might be crucified yourself. But Pontius Pilate was very, very gracious to them because he knew Jesus was innocent, as we're going to see. And so he gave the body to them. They hurriedly took the body, threw a shroud over it, a wrapping over it, put it in the grave, and closed the grave up for there. I mean, didn't seal it completely, but they closed it up because they had to go home, because at 6 p.m. would begin a high holy day, which was a Sabbath, and that was on Thursday. But Thursday began at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, as we look at it. And then Friday, the Sabbath there, on the Wednesday began, Thursday began at 6 p.m., and then at 6 p.m. this day begins Friday. I know this is confusing because we don't go by that time. But at 6 p.m. Thursday was Friday. Now at 6 p.m. Friday, there's another Sabbath. Okay? There's another Sabbath at 6 p.m. on Friday. Now, Jesus has had a very hurried burial. Now they go and they take more spices and things. They buy spices on Friday. Friday morning is not the Sabbath. Friday's Sabbath begins at 6 p.m. So they had from 6 a.m. or whatever, they went out and bought spices. They could not buy spices on this day because that day is a holy day. You can't do any commerce, it's against the law. So here, Friday morning, they went out and they bought these spices, and they bring the spices, and they wrap his body in all of this, and he's in the tomb. Now, this is on Friday. Friday evening begins the Sabbath. And that will be Friday evening till 6 p.m. and then on Saturday, Sunday begins at 6 p.m. But the Sabbath, it goes all the way into the next day. Now, in the meanwhile, the Jews have gone to Pilate, and they asked Pilate to give them a guard to guard the tomb, because he said that he was going to rise. The disciples had given up all hope, but the Jews heard his words. He said that I will rise. Destroy this temple in 3 days. I will be in the heart of the earth. Remember, the sign that he gave to him was a sign of what? Of Jonah. And Jonah was in the belly of the Leviathan, or great fish, how long? 3 days and 3 nights. And by the way, he had to go all the way from somewhere around Tarshish out there in the Mediterranean Sea, all the way down around the Horn of Africa, if this fish was swimming, and all the way up into the Indian Ocean, and up into the Persian Gulf, and then up the Euphrates, Tigris River. That's a lot of swimming. But 3 days and 3 nights, Jonah was dead in the belly of the fish. That's the prophecy that he gave them. So he said, I'm going to be dead in the heart of the earth for how long? 3 days, 3 nights. Now, how are you going to get 3 days and 3 nights from Friday to Sunday? That's 72 hours. If they buried him on Friday at 6 p.m. and any time Sunday, is there going to be 72 hours? No. But that's what Catholicism has rubbed off on the earth. We talk about the Holy Week. People talk about the Holy Week all the time. The Holy Week began with Tuesday. Tuesday. You know, had the triumphal entry and all of this stuff. All of this goes on. The chronology is not right if you study it like the Catholic Church does, and a lot of Protestants in the world too. So anyway, if Jesus was buried, which he was, before Wednesday at 6 p.m., By the time Saturday at 6 p.m., he's been in the grave how long? 72 hours. So sometime on Saturday or early, now the Sabbath or Sunday begins at 6 p.m., doesn't it? Now Jesus rose on the Sunday, the first day of the week, but the first day of the week didn't begin at 12 a.m. on Sunday morning. It began over here at 6 p.m. on Saturday. And somewhere between this and it goes over here to this day now, somewhere between here and there, Jesus rose from the dead. Now, the women went looking for Jesus. They went looking for Jesus before daylight. Okay? Before daylight. It was still dark when they went there. So sometime early on Sunday, which began at 6 p.m. Saturday, okay, Jesus rose. Now, he absolutely rose from the dead. Jesus rose from the dead. He was nailed to the cross at 9 a.m. on Wednesday. He was dead on the cross by 3 p.m. on Wednesday. Between 3 p.m. and 6 p.m., and that's only 3 hours now. Because the high holy day, there's 2 holy days in this week. One of them on Thursday, and one of them on Friday and Saturday. Because the day begins at 6 p.m. and ends at 6 p.m. Someplace during that period of time, Jesus rose from the dead. And he rose on the first day of the week. Someplace time after 6 p.m. on Saturday. I hope that is clear. That's the preview of all of these other things that we're going to do. Our Father, we send this message out as we study it and we look at the chronology of the death of your Son and of that week that he went through so much misery. I thank you for him. I thank you for all the blessings you give us. And please use this